Amanda.
And I'm Allison.
Welcome to another episode of Simply Sapphic.
A little disclaimer, if you're watching on YouTube, ignore the sign behind me. We rebranded after recording this episode. This episode is all about how to come out to your family.
Incredible.
Yeah. I put out a poll. So I run I helped start the Sapphic Discord in Austin. And I put a poll out and I said, what's the most difficult thing about being queer? And the number one thing that people said was coming out to your family.
Oh my, yeah.
And it's so interesting to me because I was like, yes, absolutely. But it also made me feel really grateful to how I came out.
Oh, because you had an easier coming out.
Super easy.
Oh my goodness.
Super easy. And I think that was a product of the super not easy things that I did prior to realizing my queerness. But I still am like really, I'm like, man, how do we make this easy? And why is it so hard?
Yeah. Well, I feel like the hardness doesn't necessarily come from the process. It comes from the reaction.
Yes.
You know?
Like, it's not queerness. It's
the response to the queerness.
The political response, the political nature of queerness, which sucks.
Yeah. And even like the religious element and everything. And so like the coming out process, I think, will become easier and eventually maybe not even necessary once the reaction to it changes. Because the reaction I had to it was awful. Like, not good.
Will you tell me about that?
Yeah, I mean, you know this, but like my parents said that I had died. Mm-hmm. Like, it was like a full rejection. It was like a full grieving. Like, and then, you know, a lot of things were said about like not being welcome anymore.
Yeah, it's really frustrating. And it, like, when I told my dad about your coming out story, my dad like cried.
Yeah.
Because it's interesting because my dad not obviously, but like isn't perfect in the way that he responds to queerness. Like, I told him I was a lesbian and he goes, I don't really want to call you that because lesbians are really like butch and they don't look like you, basically.
Yeah.
And
the stereotype that he had in his head.
Yes. And I was like, okay, Dad, let's break down like why like butch lesbians and other like gender non-conforming people are the most brave, incredible people in this world and why they need your respect. And we had that whole conversation and he ended it and he was like, oh, I understand. And I think that's the difference. Yeah. You know, is his generation and generations before grew up with stereotypes and fear around queer people. And that's what they've come to the table. And it's their responses that make coming out hard.
Yeah. Yeah. And because my parents are of the same generation. And there's this also the religious element of it too, a fear of like, this isn't biblically accurate. Okay, so your dad was like super incredible with like having that conversation with you. How did you come out to him? And like, what was that whole process? What did that look like?
I think by the time I was ready to come out to my family, I had sat with myself a lot and kind of was like, how am I going to come out? And so I waited until we were in person over Christmas and I said, hey, Dad. At the time I came out as bisexual. But
same.
Yeah. Yeah. A lot of my friends, a lot of our friends will say like, oh yeah, I came out as bisexual first. But yeah, I was like, Dad, I like girls. And we had some wine. We had my sister, my dad, we were there. And
so the whole family? Who all was there?
My dad and my sister.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. My stepmom had gone to bed by that point. And so I was just like, Dad, I like girls. And yeah. And he was like, me too. Nice. And then I said it and I was like, oh, thank God. Like, that was so easy. What a relief.
Yeah.
And then the next morning I was like, Dad, thank you so much for how you responded to me coming out. And he was like, oh, I thought you were joking. And I was like, oh no, I was for real.
You're like, thanks for this incredibly vulnerable moment and your wonderful response to it.
Yes. It was so funny. But no, but you know, once he understood that I was coming out to him, he was like, oh, okay, Amanda, like, you don't even need to come out to me. Like, I accept you for however you are, whatever you want to do, I trust you. And then the conversations, like, you know, he would call me up and be like, Amanda, like, when I started dating you, he was like, okay, can you explain to me, like, he'll reach out and he'll be like, can you explain to me what non-binary means? And then we had a whole conversation about pronouns and non-binary and like, what gender is, like gender versus sex. And there's just so much education that I am so happy to like answer and help him with, because he's so welcoming to receive it.
Yeah, well, and it just sounds like he's doing, like, it's coming out of a place of love and genuine curiosity.
Yes.
And like a curiosity to understand rather than like a curiosity to judge and then to defend his own thoughts. Where mine was the opposite. There was no questions. It was just hard judgment.
Yeah.
You know?
Tell me about yours.
I came out I texted my family in like a day in September.
What made you want to text instead of do it in person or a phone call?
Oh, good question. I was living in Texas and they were in Jacksonville, Florida. So I wasn't going to do it in person. It also felt safer to do it where I could hang up a phone and like not have to see them. Also, unfortunately, at the time, I was really pressured into coming out by my very first partner, who was like, oh yes, my very first partner was like, you have to come out.
Or what?
Or like, you are not gay and we cannot be in a relationship.
It's so hard because like on one end, like it's like, okay, well, I don't know what I was gonna say. On one end, it's like, okay, it's hard. It could be hard. I've never dated someone who was still in the closet, but it could be really hard. And like you kind of struggle. It's not affirming. Like you struggle with like, oh my gosh, I can't show my love. Dating someone who's not out of the closet, but like pressuring you and saying you're not gay unless you come out. And also the fact that they lived in Florida. Were you openly out in Texas?
Oh, I was openly out in Texas. I was even posting my queerness like online because I didn't have any of my family members on there. But yeah, this unfortunate partner, you never have to date anybody who's like this, by the way. You can break up with them however, whenever. You don't have to. But yeah, it was a lot of like bringing in my legitimacy of my queerness into question.
See, that's awful. Yeah, don't date people like this. Don't let them pressure this. Yeah,
you don't ever let anybody pressure you. And it was hard because this was my very first relationship. So I was like, I don't want to disappoint them because I have problems with people pleasing.
Yes, and it's your first relationship.
And it's my first relationship.
Like she was probably so sparkly and you're like, this is so great. Like, yeah.
Oh, I was thrilled. I was like, it's happening.
How awful.
Yeah, very much so. So I texted them on a day in September.
Your family?
And my family, specifically my mom and my dad. And I said, I would like to FaceTime you. I have something I need to share with you. And by that point, I was already a very fierce and loud LGBT ally. Enough to where my mom was like, are you thinking about things? And I had to be like, no, because I was terrified. So then I told them, and their immediate response was that I had died.
Wow.
Yeah. And
so how has the relationship been after you come out?
A lot of boundaries have been set now. It was a really hard about 5 years. It was the same conversation over and over again. You're going to go to hell. This isn't right. We do not accept you.
Yeah.
And that's been the most consistent conversation for the last 5 years.
It's so awful because like they won't even let you come home. Like your sister has had a kid and she doesn't want you to meet them.
Yeah, well, it's funny because it's twofold. I finally set a boundary. I said, until me being gay is okay, I won't come home. And that was because my sister had a baby and she said, until you like repent, don't come here. So I was like, okay. If my gayness now gets me kicked out, my queerness is like is a means of removal. I'm not even gonna go to you anymore.
Yeah,
things like that. Yeah, and they don't want to meet any of my partners. Like, pretty clear boundaries.
Yeah, I think boundaries are super, super important, and we're definitely gonna talk about that more. Yes. I think it's interesting because like, I had such a smooth coming out experience because. I have family who's very devout Catholic, like they voted for Trump and are very into him, and I actually, I removed them from my life. I said, until you apologize for the abuse that you gave my sisters and I guess speaking just for myself, like until you apologize for a lot of things, you're not allowed in my life. And I did that like 5 years before I realized I was queer.
Oh, wow. So
And-
when you realized it, how did you prepare for your coming out event? Like, did you distance yourself from more people? What was that process?
Honestly, because I had distanced myself from all the like anyone who had wronged me and crossed boundaries with me already, I didn't have much to prepare for. I think most of the preparing was me figuring out who I was and my own journey with coming out as to myself. And then once I came out to myself, I was like, oh, I'm super excited to tell my like very loving sister and dad.
Oh, that's
And
beautiful.
my stepmom is also very loving and affirming. I came out to her the next day and she was like, yay. Yeah.
Yay. Okay, that's so sweet though. Like
Yeah.
that your preparation was so gentle.
Yes.
Yeah.
What about you?
Not the same.
Not the same.
No. I would my preparation in coming out was like I was ready for the worst. And I emotionally got myself ready. I also feel like I sat with myself and I was like, I need to gather all the reasons why they shouldn't disown me. But I need to be prepared for it. And so I sat with myself for a little bit to be like, okay, like I'm ready to do what I need to do to try to keep my family, but also under the understanding that that may not work. So it was a very stressful couple like days, because then also I had the pressure of my partner with a ticking clock being like, this needs to happen now. So I was like, I need to keep my relationship and I need to try to keep my family, but I
you
don't
love
think
them.
because I love my family. I love them. So yeah, I was up nights. It like plagued me. I just would sit and think like, okay, what are all the options? How do I respond? And what are things I can say to convince them to still love me and want me?
I mean, I just feel like you were hit on all ends. Because I mean, it's your girlfriend being like, if you love me, you're gonna come out, and then your family, like, not telling you this directly, but being like, if you love us, you won't be gay.
Yes.
Yeah,
And
that's
then
awful. That's so hard.
it was really hard, and
I can't even imagine the emotional turmoil.
I was in a new state.
Oh my God, Allison.
Yeah, so I was like away from everything that I knew. I was in Texas for the first time, and then I just started grad school.
Honestly, I just want to like applaud your resilience. Like I knew this story, but just like hearing everything that you were going through, like coming out is not easy. But the fact that you were hit from like all ends, it's just like a testament to like how brave you are.
Thank you. Yeah, I mean, it was exhausting. It was not easy, and that's why it's so exciting to hear stories for people who it was, because I think it shows to me that like there is hope, and there is goodness, because for like 5 years all I saw was hatred,
Yeah.
and love masking
Yeah.
like hatred.
Would you do anything differently about how you came out to your family?
Oh yeah, I would. I think I spent a lot of time begging for their love and trying to validate myself in their eyes, like trying to get their validation. Just love me, see me, accept me, love me, see me, accept me. And I wish I hadn't done that. I think I wish I had stood firm, being like, this is who I am, and I almost wish that your acceptance didn't matter to me. Instead I spent years begging for it, and just like craving it and wanting it, which I think is valid. But I would, if I were to go back, I wouldn't have begged. I just would have let them go.
And knowing that like letting them go is an act of love.
Yes. I think like looking back, being like, oh, I could have saved myself 5 years of a ton of pain. Yeah, I wish I would have just said, this is who I am. You have to deal with it.
I mean, it's hard though because you grew up and your family was, from what I've heard, there was just so much love in your household.
And that's what's always hard to explain to people.
Yeah.
Is that I grew up in the most loving household you can imagine. So kind, so gentle, so wonderful, so close. And so this event was devastating. It was devastating. Like, in it, I didn't believe unconditional love existed for years. I was like, it really kind of ruptured any security and safety that I felt with what was meant to be my family and the values that they said they stood by. And then having to see the hypocrisy in those values was earth shattering.
Because they were like, we love you, we love you, we love you, all growing up. And then the minute you decide you're queer, they don't love you anymore, or they love you only if that you can hide your queerness, right?
It was like, we love you, we love you, we love you. Here's all the ways we love you. And here's the ways they love me were very positive and uplifting and wonderful. And then I came out, and all the ways that they decided to show that love from there on was very harming. Love went from, hi, Allie, oh my gosh, how's your life? Who are you dating? To, hi, Allie, we love you. Don't come home anymore. Hi, Allie, we love you. And because we love you, we can't let you poison the grandkids. Like, stay, like, we can't let you bring this, you know. My mom said, we treat you this way because you're family.
See, I feel like that manipulation of the word love, it messes with you. Because then it's like, that's not what love is, but they really want you to believe that so that you will do it's manipulative.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And for them, it also comes out of a place of fear.
Yeah.
You know, people who were, you know, really indoctrinated into the church, the worst thing that could happen is that you're separated from your family because one goes to hell. So I genuinely believe that in their eyes, this is the biggest act of love because they don't want to be separated when we die. They want us all to be in heaven. And so that's why it's almost an impossible negotiation.
Which is so interesting. I don't want to go too off topic here, but it's so interesting because like the queerness in the Bible was planted there like very recently.
Yeah.
And it's actually not the reality. Like the original
Hebrew.
Yeah, I don't know why I was trying to say Hindu. The original Hebrew translation has nothing to do with homosexuality.
Nothing.
And so it's interesting because you have all these queer affirming churches that are like standing on the reality of queerness is that it's not bad, it's just love.
Yeah.
And then there's still kind of these like outliers that are still believing in like false translations,
which is wild because as my family has expressed it to me, queer affirming churches are false prophets.
Awful. They say that?
100%.
Oh my God.
Oh yeah, they told me that. Because I like, they were like, that's a false prophet. That's not the truth.
That's awful because then you being like, oh, here is queer affirming Christianity. Here are some things that I learned here, you know, and anything that you do is wrong because it's just a false prophet.
Correct. And also anything that I say about the wonderfulness of queerness is wrong.
See, that's just awful.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that's where I wish now having known this, having 5 years of that, I wish now going back, just to not try to negotiate.
Setting boundaries is an act of love.
Absolutely. And I wish I had set them hard and strong right from the get-go. And yeah, so if I had a time machine to go backwards, I would have, but I'm also very thankful that I'm able to do that now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Good.
Yeah.
I don't think I would have done anything differently.
No.
I think it was just so smooth that I don't know how it could have gone any better. Maybe we could have all gone out to a gay bar after.
Okay, so did you, like, your expectations for you coming out, were you preparing for anything bad, or did you know just like right from the get-go that this is going to be like a wonderful moment?
I think no matter how affirming your family is, it's still nerve-wracking to come out.
Yeah.
And so while I wasn't expecting to be disowned, I was expecting to maybe be invalidated. I was expecting to have a lot of questions. But mostly I think like I had tested the waters enough with my dad, which we'll get into also, but like he was an ally. Like he openly spoke about like queer allyship.
Oh, so you had proof.
Yeah.
Through your dad's like living.
Yes.
That you were like, if this happens to me, we're going to talk all about this because I had the opposite. I had proof that it was going to be bad.
Yes. Should we segue into
Let's do it.
the last part of the podcast, but like
The
also it's very long. The second half. There we go. the bulk of the podcast topic. So we want to get into like advice that we have both thought of ourselves and researched online. Advice for people who want to come out to their families and don't know where to start, or are looking just for general
Just
help.
some guidance on the process, because it can feel so lonely on how to do it. So yeah, we're gonna be here just to try to help provide some ideas and some things to make it a little bit easier.
Yes. Yeah, we hope this is going to make it like very, step by step. Let's figure out how to do this. We've broken all the advice up from our many sources into 3 sections, which is what to consider before you come out, how to care for yourself before you do it, and then how to care for yourself after you do it. So do you want to go into and kick us off with what to consider before you come out to your family?
Yeah, so something to encourage you to think about before you do this is which order you want to come out to people, and doing that intentionally. So like an example would be, are you coming out to maybe the most affirming members of your family first, and then maybe tackling the least affirming later on, to help you maybe build your confidence as you're coming out, so you're kind of welcomed more with love and acceptance. And then by the time you've built that strong support system, you can tackle the people that maybe have a less positive reaction towards it.
Yeah, I think that is so important to find out, like, I guess how you might figure out who's the most affirming and least affirming. One, do you have any queer friends? If so, come out to them first.
Yeah.
Highly recommend coming out to any queer friends from your past first. I did that. I went to college with a really good friend, and she moved to LA, and I called her up and I said, oh my God, remember that one time when we were both straight and at Pride, and now you're a lesbian, or you're queer, and now I'm queer as well. And we had just a moment of like the most affirming coming out, which is just like screaming on the phone happy dances in our in our separate spaces. But like, it's just, when you start by coming out to the queer people in your life, like, it's a celebration, because I feel like queer people are going to give newly out queer people who love you are going to give you the celebration that you deserve.
Absolutely. I came out to my friend from undergrad first, and they were like, we know, and it ended up being like this like beautiful phone conversation. And then luckily I was surrounded by really affirming people, which now I'm thinking back, if I hadn't done that first, my parents would have been even more devastating.
Yes, because when you start with the least affirming people in your life, then it's like they'll trample your confidence. And I feel like when we are first coming out, like when I first came out, I was so vulnerable. And my, like, is this a phase? What am I? Like, who am I? It's just so, it's a ship that it's so easily rocked that if you come out to people who are super not affirming, it can just knock you off the ship.
Oh yeah.
Right away.
Right into the water.
Yeah.
I mean, my partner being like, I don't think you're queer.
As you're actively dating them, like, that's so weird to me.
Oh, it put my whole body into panic.
Oh, yeah.
Because then all the fears and insecurities that as you're first coming out, right? Like, is this a phase? I don't think it is. Like, no. Like, and now I have to prove it in a way that I never expected that I'd have to prove it. You don't ever have to prove it.
You don't
ever have to prove your queerness to anybody ever. But yeah, I think starting off with that and just building that like a really affirming community first, and then tackling. Okay, so I guess something that we should talk about in this section is, how are you able to identify the people who you're not sure?
Yeah, because if you don't have queer people in your life, or after you already have come out to the queer people in your life, how do you figure out this middle section?
Yeah.
So that's a really good layout. Like, how do you know? One of the references that we looked at was the Trevor Project. And the Trevor Project, I'm gonna read this, but they suggest that you ask how you feel. Like, you go up to people, and then you just kind of like start a conversation,
a casual convo,
like, how do you feel about this queer celebrity? Yeah. And then see if they go, are they talking about their art, or do they suddenly just go, oh, I don't like them because they're queer? Like some other topics, how do you feel about marriage equality? How do you feel about, like, queer people in our life?
Yeah.
And just see how they react.
Mm-hmm. Their response to it.
Because if, I think their allyship to strangers will give you a really it'll give you a really clear picture of their allyship to you.
Yeah. And if you're especially talking to somebody who's maybe particularly more religious and possibly less into pop culture, a really good intro is just, how do you think like the Bible talks about gayness and queerness? And they will let you know, if it's a love the sinner or love the sin, hate the sinner situation. And that will also shed light on how they kind of view it in the context of the Bible.
Yeah, it's really interesting, all the little ways that you can bring up and suss out how people feel about queerness. I remember I was like thinking about working with this like meditation practitioner, and at one point I feel like I'm going to go on a very quick tangent, but it's just such an interesting story to me. So she does past life regression therapy. And so what the whole thing is you go into a meditative state and she guides you into looking through past lives. I'm like, I think the bottom line is I really want to believe in it. And so I was super interested in just like trying it out to see what it was like. And so I was on the phone with her, and I forget how it was brought up, but the fact that I was queer was brought up.
Oh yeah, it's this lady.
Yes.
Yep. Oh.
And she goes, her immediate response to me being queer was, I'm really trying to remember the context, but her response is what matters. And it was, oh, you're queer? We can totally look into your past lives to see if you were like abused by a man, like what trauma led to this, so that maybe we can fix it.
Yeah, as if there was like, we need to find the root of the illness so we can cure you of it.
And I immediately, once she said that, I was like, oh, interesting. And I at that point I was like, I'm not going to work with this lady. But it was just super interesting, because then like I think she kind of felt the shift in my conversation with her, and she was like, oh, or I guess there are some people who don't want that to be fixed, so that's fine. And it's just so interesting.
That is wild
it's
to me.
It's just so wild.
That like, oh, I guess you might be an outlier who likes your queerness. Mm-hmm. And so that is a really good way to suss out if somebody is, she essentially just outed herself.
I mean, she did, but it was interesting because like to me, that's not an outright, like I'm not an ally, because that it was posed to me as, oh, we can help fix you. I want to help you. And so just be aware of the like nuances and how people are allies. But
I feel like an ally wouldn't look at queerness as a fixable problem.
Absolutely not.
So I was like, that to me outs this person as not an ally at all.
Exactly.
That it's even phrased as a fixable issue.
Yes. So don't let people bully you into thinking that they're helping you when they are in fact not an ally. So if they're not like fervent supporters, or if they're like my dad who support but have questions, just like suss out the vibe and just figure out who's safe.
Because questions are very different. Also, like, think about the kinds of questions that, like, as you're going through this process of maybe trying to like figure out who in your community is feeling what kinds of questions are they asking, and then trust your gut on where you think, what place these questions might be coming from is a really good.
And then as you work from least or most affirming to least affirming, you can then get like, I guess, harder and harder questions that might come that you can then have prepared answers to. Like, oh, you just asked me like why I'm choosing a life of sin, but I answered that to a more affirming friend and I know my answer now. You know what I mean? So it's kind of like practicing. And then once you're ready to come out to the least affirming like parts of your circle, it's like you're prepared for it.
Yeah. So that's something that we also say to like consider is like before you come out is being prepared for questions and how you may want to answer some questions, and also knowing that there are some questions you don't ever have to answer. And these people can do the research on their own. So it's also okay to say, hey, like, actually, I'm going to let you do the research on this one. That's a completely valid answer. But be prepared for some questions, especially for your people that are maybe leading with curiosity. Mm-hmm. And also, unfortunately, some people who aren't.
What questions were you asked when you came out?
Oh, I was asked if I was ever hurt. That was hurt. I was asked, how long have I known? How long did I hide it? I was also asked why. Why are you doing this?
Same. I was asked why a lot. Not why are you doing this, but like, yeah.
Yeah. So having some answers just kind of ready, even if you have to write them down in like a journal, just so you have them, so you can say it. And also, you know, feel free, you don't have to expand on your answers any more than what you give. That can just be so helpful. I wish I had done that. I wish I had a little journal
Same.
of things that I could have been like, why? Oh, because I love myself. Like,
Yeah. I mean, it's interesting. So my coming out to my family circumstance was pretty easy, but I think coming out to a lot of straight friends was what was hard. Because like I had come out to old like friends with benefits, and like one of them was like, well, then what were we? Like, did you just not care about me?
Immediately centering themselves.
Or like, actually, tell me about lesbian sex. That's really interesting to me. And I was like, what? Why? Like, just so weird. Those were both cis men.
Which, and those are questions, like if somebody's like, tell me about gay sex or lesbian sex or queer sex,
I said no. Do not answer.
You do not have to answer.
You do not.
You can say, I'm not comfortable answering that.
Yep.
Period.
We should do a podcast episode where we answer questions that queer people should not have to answer, so that if people ask you a weird question, you can send them to our podcast.
That's brilliant.
Okay.
We should absolutely do this. Send us your questions.
Yeah, send us your questions. We will literally answer them.
Yeah, we'll answer them for you, and then you can just send your people.
You just
to
be like,
us.
I don't want to talk about lesbian sex. You can listen to this podcast episode, and we'll make it. Let's see if we can draft something so that it's like like not outing queer secrets.
Yeah.
We'll keep the the clitoris
keep
to
the
ourselves.
cards. Yeah, keep the cards close to the chest.
We will not tell.
They gotta figure that one out on their own.
Yes, yeah.
Yeah.
So I mean, just like think about questions that your family might have, and then journal. I wish I did that too, because when my friend was like, well, what was I was like, and then I found myself being like, oh, I cared about you, I just didn't understand what
Well, yeah,
was
because it
going
turned
on.
it about their feelings and about
Yes.
you validating their feelings when this is really a moment about you.
Yes.
And it's okay to really defend that.
Yes. Stand up for yourself, because this is a celebratory moment. You have just realized something huge and life-changing
And wonderful.
and so fucking cool.
So awesome.
So fucking cool. And so, yeah, just make sure that you are prepared for invalidating questions.
The next thing to also consider is how you want to do it. Text, email, FaceTime at Christmas with the whole family, carrier pigeon. Think about the way, you know, you don't owe them in person.
No.
If you don't want to. I couldn't. I knew that was going to be devastating and hard, and I wouldn't be able to like have a space that was safe for me to go to after. So I did it at a distance, and I'm very thankful that I did that.
Yeah. And I think just, you know, if you are better at explaining things written down, send them a letter. Like, I just think that's so, like, coming out can be so, I don't know. I think it's a big enough event that it would warrant a snail mail letter, you know?
Yeah, I think it warrants whatever. It's about you.
Yeah.
And your comfort and what you feel is best. And so do it in any way that you feel. If you need to like do it in a Sims world, like do it. I'm trying to think of like other ways. Like
You're talking about, because I've just been,
yeah.
I've been holed up in our room playing Sims for the past week. But
Amanda's building a whole life outside of me on Sims. I get updates on her wife and her children.
I have one daughter.
Her child.
It's funny because I was like, oh, I don't want kids, and then I started having a Sims baby, and I go to Allison, I was like, we should make a baby. And Allison's like, Amanda, we're not married.
I was like, Amanda, one can't right now financially.
Yeah.
And two,
Less about whether we're married or not. We can do whatever the hell we want.
Oh my gosh.
But yeah, I think like also thinking about what you say is completely up to you. Like, if you want to say, hey, I'm gay, period, I'll talk to you in a couple days, you know? Do that. If you think it would feel good for you to write out a whole explanation or sit someone down and give your whole life story, I think that's beautiful as well. So it can be as short or as long as the boundaries that you set are respectful to you.
Yeah. It's all about, again, I think we're just going to say this 1,000 times, but it's what feels good to you. Mm-hmm. And what feels good to you might feel different to somebody else, and that's okay.
Yes.
Yeah. So there might be things that we're saying that you say, that does not feel good to me. Don't do it.
It's really interesting. So Allison had their book launch a couple days ago, and one thing that that's still been on my mind is the fact that you said, when I wrote the mom chapter in my book, you were still considering her feelings.
Yeah.
And so even in my affirming family, I was still considering like my dad's feelings when I came out. I was still considering my like ex hookups feelings when I came out to him, you know? And I really wish that I considered my feelings more.
Yeah, same. I wish I prioritized my feelings above all,
Yes.
but I hadn't. I
Yeah.
prioritized my partners and I prioritized my parents over me for years until I finally was like, oh, I can't do that
No.
anymore.
I mean, I think it's also a result of kind of the place that a lot of queer people are in when they come out. It's like, oh, I have to defend myself, right? Like, you've seen me as a straight person, or you've not seen me in complete queerness, and now I have to defend the fact that I am real. And I think that, you know, it's understandable that that's where a lot of coming out stories kind of base in. But I think if I were going to go back and give myself advice, I'd be like, think about what would feel really good to you, because you just blurting it out at Christmas, you know, when you were too afraid of not having a time to do it like before. I think if I intentionally asked for space, then that's the only thing that I would have changed. So I think point is, consider yourself first, draw the boundaries, don't answer questions that don't feel affirming, answer questions that do. And yeah, I think one thing that we actually don't have written down is relationships are going to change.
Yeah.
Very much.
Yeah.
When you come out. And
sometimes for the better.
Oftentimes for the better.
Yeah.
Because then you can show up authentically into friendships or whatever the relationship is.
Yeah.
But I think that my relationship to a lot of old friends definitely changed. I took kind of a step back after coming out to them because of how that was received.
Yeah. Yeah. So yeah, that's something to be prepared for.
And I think one thing that helps me think, and I guess like empowers me in thinking about losing friends, is that when you lose friends, when you lose things in your life, think about it less like you're losing them and now there's a big hole that you're empty. Think about instead that you're losing people, which is creating space for better people.
Yes.
Because the amount of community and the amount of love that I have found myself surrounded with since coming out has exponentially grown because of the space and energy that I wasn't putting into unaffirming kind of toxic people.
Yeah. Yes. Yes. Oh my goodness. Same. I had to go through a big mind shift because when I came out, I was like, oh, my family can't love me. I am unlovable.
Awful.
And instead now I just realized that, oh, that's just not a love I deserve.
Yes.
I am lovable. This is just not something that serves me. And it is not something that I deserve. I actually deserve better. And I get to now define what love actually is. And it will still be there in an abundance. Just at that time, I couldn't see it that way.
Yeah.
So something to kind of keep in your head, especially if you're going into a situation that may not have a super positive outcome. Their reaction is not a reflection of you as a person or your worth as a person. It's a reflection on them and how they choose to treat people. And you don't have to keep anybody in your life who chooses to treat you in a way that you don't deserve and you don't want.
Yeah. And I think that kind of goes into like the next thing, which is how to take care of yourself before you come out.
Ooh, something else we said to consider was timing.
Oh yeah. Timing and location. Pin.
Yeah.
So do you want to take it?
Sure. Yeah. So you can consider time of day. You know, are you doing it in the morning, in the evening, at midnight, at lunch?
What time of day do you feel the most like lucid?
Yeah. And the calmest and the most centered and the most grounded. And then like in terms of just like what's going on in your life, right? Does it feel better to do it at Christmas? Does it feel better to do it when there's no big events going on? Do you want to do it on like a random Tuesday, a random Monday? Maybe it's better to do it on a Friday evening so you have the whole weekend to kind of process when you're not at work. Just think about all the elements in terms of timing that surround it and where you would feel the best. Again, also something to consider is like we had an example when we were drafting this, which is like maybe if the whole family is going to a funeral that day, Potentially. I mean, you know your family the best, but that may not be the best situation.
Yes,
time
I think
to
that
do
was on the Trevor Project. They have that.
it
It's
was on the
like,
Trevor
don't
Project?
come out around funerals. Yeah. So just think about the mental state of you and the person you're coming out to. And also like the location. So do you want to do it in at home, in private, in public? Like, where do you feel safe if you're going to do it in person? You know, in this case, I think it is good to consider the other person, because if you put, you know, if the other person says, I'm really triggered by coffee shops, I wouldn't say go to a coffee shop and come out to them because you feel good in coffee shops, because you don't want them to go and be on the defensive. Like, you want them to be also calm in order to receive like potentially really huge life impacting news.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely.
Great.
It's just like strategic.
It's unfortunately, but it's strategic, but it's also just like empathetic.
True.
I think it's like being kind. How do you be kind to yourself and the other person? But mostly yourself as you come out.
Yeah, if there's like a split, like you weigh more,
Yes.
but it can also make the process easier for you
Yes.
with using that empathy
Yes.
in there.
Yep.
Yeah.
Great.
Great. What's the next one that we have?
How to take care of yourself before you come out, which we did already kind of talk through. But just like, I would say one thing that really helped me come out is the fact that I took a couple months to really like build my confidence around queerness and validate myself in how I was and how I was queer and who I was, you know, so that by the time like I had questions coming at me, I did my best with answers. I think I could have been more prepared for some of the questions, but I think the biggest thing you can do for yourself is just tell like yourself how much you love yourself, and how much, like, no matter what happens, like if somebody takes your coming out story and you coming out to them negatively, they did the job of letting you know they're not good for you.
Yeah.
And you can say, okay, I respect, or I don't respect how you just handled that and how you are handling me. I'm going to draw a boundary and kind of like diminish this relationship to what will serve the both of us, and then I'm going to move on and find a better friend.
Yeah.
You know, it's hard when it's your family, but it's like, but it's also, it's hard when it's your family. It's very complicated. But also like when I kind of gave my mom an ultimatum, my birth mother an ultimatum, and I said, I think you need to go to therapy, and I think you need to reflect on how you hurt us as children, hurt me as a child. Once you do that, I'm open to talking to you. And she still hasn't done that. And so that's a boundary that I set. And it's hard sometimes to be like, oh, I don't really have a mom. But I think the mental health consequences of having her in my life would like be much worse.
Yeah. Build that confidence, and then set those boundaries.
Yeah, set the boundaries.
They pay off in the long run.
Oh my God, they do.
Like, yes.
Losing toxic people, it just makes so much room for love.
Yeah. That doesn't mean it's an easy process, but it's so worth it when you get to the end.
Yep.
It's so worth it.
So, all right, let's move into, you've already come out, you've done what you need to do. And now how do you take care of yourself after?
If you want to go get yourself a little treat,
oh my God, go get boba.
Go get boba.
That's our treat.
That's our little treat. Go get a little treat. Like, go. I mean, if you have especially if you've come out to other people who are affirming, if you like want to let them know that it's about to happen, and then they can be ready to absolutely just hold you after, like, feel free to go to like your friend's house who knows, you know, and let them like care for you. We like, another one is like meditation, like doing things that make your body feel good. If you want to go take a hike, go on a hike, go pet your dog, go like hold your cat, say affirmations in the mirror,
Give yourself a self-hug.
give yourself a hug, get other people, like get your friends, like let them, don't be afraid to tell your community what you need, especially if like you've built one that's very affirming. You know, if you want to call them up and be like, hi, I'm about to come out to my family, this is what I'm worried about, this is how I might go, can I lean on you after? Like, do it.
I wish I did that.
Same.
Because that's just such a beautiful, and I wish people would do that to me, because I know people who are actively coming out now, and I would love to support them.
Oh my, I would be like, come, we will cuddle, puddle, Like, we will surround you in pillows and tea, and we will affirm the life out of you.
Yes.
Like, yes, same.
Yeah. So like it's so interesting. Like you had said something earlier, like when you deny people, like you asking for help, like when you don't ask people for help, you're denying them the ability to like love you,
To show their love.
to show their love.
Yeah.
And so I just think like that's such a good idea. If you have like people who make you feel really good, call them up and do exactly what Allison just said. Just go, I'm about to come out to my family. I'm really afraid of it. Do you think you could be ready with some cookies? You know, like,
Yeah.
you know, whatever you want. And then you just are like, you go through a really hard thing that could make you feel like shit, but then you walk into like the open arms of like some really good friends.
Yeah. And don't be afraid of that vulnerability. You know, I that's why, like, Inside Out, I'm like, I think it's a brilliant
Oh my
movie,
God.
because like the
Inside
whole
Out.
idea, it's okay to show sadness, because showing sadness allows your community to gather around you and help you to feel happiness, and that these feelings can all exist, and they don't have to be viewed as negative.
Yeah.
They all help build you into a you that can thrive.
Allison, you had written in that you have some resources that people can use to either give to their family or lean on as
Yeah.
far as coming out goes.
Yeah, so one resource that I found, funny enough, on Instagram, that I tried to get my family to look into, they refused. Sometimes your people are going to refuse resources. Yep.
Stick to your boundaries.
Stick to your boundaries. Like, their growth in this and their learning and their change is up to them, not up to you. You don't have to change anybody, and it's not your responsibility or your job to change anybody's mind, to validate queerness, to make them see it as something that's worth loving. Not your job. That's their job to do the digging. So release yourself of that pressure. Let them do their own digging. But one that I found that I loved was called the Reformation Project. And it is a whole group of people that is about affirming queerness within Christianity. And they even have like full lessons for parents to take about like helping them do that and helping them love their queer children. So that's an Instagram. It's the Reformation Project. Take a look.
You can just send your family resources.
Yep.
Right?
Oh,
From the Reformation Project.
Yeah, you just send their website or their Instagram, and then let them do the work from there. From there on, your family can click their own links. They can do their own scrolling and their own reading,
and then you can have conversations with the things that you feel comfortable having conversations about.
Absolutely. That's something that I had to tell my mom. The day after I came out, she called me at like 8 a.m, sobbing, being like, "You've died, you died, you died. Don't do this to us." And I'm so proud of myself for this moment, because I said to her, I don't think I'm the person to process this with. I need you to lean on your people.
Wow.
I was like, I need you to go talk this through with your Bible study or, you know, the people in your life. But I was like, it can't be me. Yeah. And
Powerful.
And we stuck to that.
Yeah.
And then I said, okay, goodbye. And I hung up the phone.
Yeah. And I mean, it's not like you completely abandoned her. Like, you've had conversations and stuff with them as well, but that's powerful as hell.
Yeah, and I had to, and I'm so, like, past Allison, I like want to give them a hug and be like, good job, because that was hard.
Yeah.
So there's that, and then there's PFLAG, literally the letter PFLAG, another website that has also resources for queer people, like literal spaces and groups that if like you're struggling, you can actually sign up through them and have like a peer community space. And they also have resources for parents and family as well that are going through this process with you. Two resources that I've interacted with and I like a lot.
Yeah. And there's so many, like, I'm pulling up, I'm writing a journal that includes resources, so I'm just pulling that up really quick. I don't know why I haven't thought of this earlier, but there's so many, like, we Googled like resources for parents, for queer kids, resources for Christian like families to help understand queerness. You know, if you just Google, like, there's so many resources out there that can help answer whatever very unique questions applies to your circumstance. So some more resources that I actually have up here there's the Transgender Lifeline, which is really freaking cool. So it's actually, you can call them and they offer like emotional and crisis support and even financial support for US and Canada based transgender people.
Incredible.
And you can just call them and talk. Just such an amazing thing. If you are not trans, there is a similar talk line for all like to us LGBTQIA plus people, called the LGBT National Youth Talk Line. Sorry, this is just for youth queer people, but it's again information, resources, and support that you can just call into their phone number. And then this one is a talk line for information, resources, and support for US based 2S LGBTQIA plus people of all ages, which is the LGBT National Hotline. LGBT National Hotline. So there's LGBT National Youth Talk Line and the LGBT National Hotline. So there's just so many resources and organizations who are queer people trying to help queer people, because there's so much empathy in the queer community for the hardships that queer people go through. So especially as you come out and try to understand, like, lean on these resources, lean on your community, lean on the people who care about you to help you go through these hard things. You don't have to do this alone. You don't have to come out to your family alone. You don't have to like do anything you don't want to do by yourself. There are people who are going through exactly what you're going through, and they would love to be found to help you through yours.
Yeah, absolutely. It can feel lonely, the process, but it doesn't have to be. And there's a lot of people who have your back. And then I think, you know, as well, coming out is at your own pace, at your own time. Nobody gets to dictate how other than you. You're the ultimate decider. So in your own time, in your own way, in a way that feels good to you. And even if you never do, you are still valid as a person. And your queerness is still valid.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. You can be queer and super introverted and that nobody knows. Your queerness is valid.
Already there. Valid.
We love you.
Yeah.
Especially.
Yes.
Yep.
Yeah. All in your own time.
Amazing.
Yay.
Great. Should we move into our Sapphic fun fact? That was not planned. That was good.
That was
We
good.
like timed our notes.
Should we write jingles?
Oh my God. I love this. Okay. I think I'm gonna go first.
Yes, do it.
Because I feel like this is a overdue Sapphic fun fact. And the fun fact is, what does Sapphic mean?
And we're finally answering
We're
that
finally
question.
answering.
For those that haven't Googled it already.
Yeah, the elephant in the room. What the heck is Sapphic? So Sapphic, it's interesting. I came across the word Sapphic in an attempt to find a more inclusive term. When I first came out, there were groups and meetups for bi and pansexual people. There were supporting groups for lesbians. There were supporting groups for gay men and transgender people, but there wasn't an inclusive group that kind of encompassed like everyone that I consider like the Sapphic community, right? And so Sapphic is actually a really beautiful word that its origins date back to the poet Sappho, who lived on Lesbos. And Sappho and the island of Lesbos actually became the home and origins of the word lesbian because of Lesbos, and Sapphic from Sappho,
Incredible.
the poet. And so this was back in like 600 BC, like way back then. And Sappho...
And people say that queer people, that it's a new thing. Get out of town.
Which is crazy because Sappho is one of the most celebrated, well-known poets in the world.
Yes.
And so the Isle of Lesbos is in Greece. And like I have a poem actually pulled up on a blog post I wrote back in May. But it's like... The poem goes, "Sweet mother, I cannot weave. Slender Aphrodite has overcome me with longing for a girl." And of course, that's the English translation. But Sappho was writing about what we now know as like WLW, women loving women, sexual orientation, back in 600 before Christ, you know?
Yep.
And so Sapphic, the meaning has definitely like changed over the years, but what it now encompasses and why I love the word Sapphic is because it brings together a community, especially if you name your events like the Sapphic Discord. It includes trans masks, trans femmes, non-binary people, and cis women of all queer sexual orientations. And it's just such a beautiful way to bring people together without using exclusionary language in your title or in your whatever you want to do. We're here to give you advice and guidance on how to like live as a Sapphic person,
Yeah.
including everyone, right?
Yeah. Yes. The more the merrier.
The more the merrier. And also I feel like people who fall under the Sapphic umbrella have very similar, like just very similar trials from living under the patriarchy, from living, you know, we have similar stories.
Yeah.
Yep.
Intersectional.
Yep.
Yeah. Wonderful.
Yep.
Alrighty. Mine is different phrases meant to identify like bisexual and lesbian people throughout history.
Okay. So like what lesbians, what like slang?
Yeah. It's like other slang, like, you know, common ones we still have today are like butch and dyke.
Okay.
But these are some, there was like an uptick in them after the 1930s. These are all American based. And so in the 1940s, we had some phrases like collar and tie.
Collar and tie, like fashion. Okay.
And then you had something called a dandy set.
A dandy.
Shim, major, manty, and mason. And then in the 1960s, the one that this website says is called pansy without a stem or jasper. And in the 70s, I don't know if I need to fact check this one, but the 70s, another common term from lesbianism was called no nuts.
No nuts. It's interesting. I wonder how many of these were like bad words for lesbians, but they're kind of cute.
I mean, I love collar and tie. This website doesn't say like what would have been considered offensive or like what's considered endearing. But yeah, I love how our language changes over time.
And I love if some of these words were like, if they were like, these are secret ways we can refer to each other. I really love the idea of like the Sapphic and queer community being like this underground subculture that we just have like secret handshakes and like we go to like, you know, cool parties and support each other in like very secret, very cool ways.
Well, we also had like, and it's so funny because secret not out of necessity for safety, but secrecy just, I guess, out of fun.
For the plot.
Like, because like, you know, there was a time when it had to be secrecy for safety.
This is very true.
But now it's like, it would be awesome to see a future where it could just be now like as we view hidden speakeasies.
Oh my God.
You know?
Somebody start a Sapphic hidden speakeasy.
Do it.
I love this. And it's also like, there's so much language that you have to learn when I came out. I think that was the one thing when I first came out. I was like, oh my God, I have to learn all these slangs. Like what's a femme? Like what's a futch?
Yeah.
What's
soft mask versus
soft?
mask
versus,
yeah.
There's so many. So I wonder also, we should have done more research into what all of these things mean. But I guess it's just like slang for, but not butch,
lesbians.
For lesbians and bisexuals.
Yeah.
But yeah, I love this.
Yeah, it was super fun. I know we should do like an episode about like lesbian words. We should find somebody who's really good with words and like the history of like linguistics.
Yes, I would love that because I think there's just so much cool history.
So much.
Yeah. Yep.
Awesome. Yay, we did it.
We hope that this gave you some like guidance and some idea of how to get started on how to come out to your family. We wish you all the best. We are supporting you. We are cheering for you. We love you. And if you want, you can let us know how coming out to your family went on our social media. You can comment and also put in, I think on Spotify, you can have little comment section.
I had no idea.
You can.
Cute.
So go ahead and
Drop a comment.
We're cheering for you.
Yay. See you next time.
Thanks for tuning in.
Be sure to subscribe, follow us on social media,
And share episodes with your friends.
see you next time.